Hello students, I'm Kulwant Raipuri, lecturer in biology in Government Model Co-Education Senior Secondary Smart School, Ladwali Road, Jalandhar. Today I will discuss with you the topic which is present in the +2 biology book in the second chapter, Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Reproduction is the process by which the living beings produce young ones of their own kind to maintain their race and to maintain their population in this world. What is the requirements for fertilization? Process of male gametogenesis, process of female gametogenesis, then transfer of pollen grains, that is pollination, then germination of that pollen grain on the stigma, and post-fertilization, then fertilization and post-fertilization changes. Name two types of reproduction in flowering plants, that is asexual reproduction, vegetative reproduction, sexual reproduction. How does sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants? Here the students will think about how the sexual reproduction takes place in the flowering plants with the help of gametes. And where is the site of sexual reproduction in flowering plants? Flowering plants में कौन सा part है जहाँ पे sexual reproduction होती है? Then what is fertilization? Fertilization में it's a mixing of the fusion of the male and female gametes to produce zygote, that is fertilization. Name the reproductive part of the flowering plant, that is flower. Flower is the reproductive part in the flowering plant. Name the male gamete in the flowering plant. Male gamete जो है in flowering plant, that is sperm. Name the female gamete in the flowering plant. Female gamete in the flowering plant is the egg. And what is the site? Where is the site of production of male gamete in a flower? A flower is a reproductive organ of the plant. Now, where is the site of production of male gamete in the flower? It is anther. And what is the site of, or where is the site of female gamete production in the flower? It is ovary, and inside the ovaries there is ovule. Inside the ovule, the female gamete will be formed. Now, what is reproduction? The process of production of young ones or offsprings of their own kind by the parents is called reproduction. The topic is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Now, what is the basic requirement to discuss the sexual reproduction in flowering plants? We will start from the flower. Flowers are the morphological and embryological marvels and the site for sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So in the world, there are about 90% of the total identified plants produce flowers for reproduction purposes. Flower, we may define the flower. What is flower? It is a modified shoot, and it is the most attractive, colorful, ornamental part of the angiospermic plant. Angiospermic means all the flowering plants, we call them as angiospermic plants. It is the site of sexual reproduction. The flower is the site of sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. In the lower classes, you may have studied about the various parts of a flower. In a flower, there are 4 main parts. Starting from the outside, there is sepals, petals, androecium, and gynoecium. Okay, we may also call them as calyx, corolla, androecium, gynoecium. Or we can call sepal, petal, stamens, and carpel or pistil. In the male reproductive part, now what is the male reproductive part of the flower? Male reproductive part of the flower is stamen, or we call it as and rhoecium. There are two parts in the stamen, that is filament and anther. Anther is the main part inside which the production of pollen grains will take place. And the pollen sacs are also called microsporangia. It has three parts: stigma, style, and ovary. Inside the ovary, there are various ovules. Inside the ovule, there are various structures like nucellus, embryo sac, polar nuclei, egg apparatus, and antipodal apparatus. We will discuss all these one by one. Sexual reproduction in plants. It is the process in plants. We have discussed the reproduction definition of reproduction already. But what is sexual reproduction in plants? It is the process of formation and fusion of haploid gametes, resulting in the production of diploid zygote, which grows to form new individual or new young one or new offspring. Now coming back to the male reproductive part of the flower, that is stamen. Two parts we have discussed earlier is a anther and filament. Now these anthers, when viewed externally, they appeared bithecous. Thecous means pockets. They have two pockets. Bithecous, bi means two. Thecous means pockets. They have two pockets. Each anther has two pockets as viewed externally. And when we cut the cross section of this anther, and inside the anther there are four sub pockets. Inside each pocket there are two sub pockets. So in one anther there are four sub pockets which we call as pollen sacs or microsporangia. If we discuss the wall of the microsporangium from external to the internal, the wall of the microsporangium consists of epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, and tapetum. Inside the tapetum, there is a large mass of cells that is called pollen mother cells, or we may call it as sporogenous tissue. The innermost wall, or the innermost part of the wall of the microsporangium is the tapetum. We will discuss about the functions of the tapetum. Tapetum, as it is the innermost layer which is in close contact with the microspore mother cells or sporogenous tissue, it will provide nourishment to the microspores. Microspores are also called pollen grains. So, tapetum will provide nourishment. It produces an enzyme, callase. Callase is required to disintegrate the collection of the pollen grains, because pollen grains have to be freed when the anther get matured. So callase is the enzyme which is produced by the tapetum to free the microspores or pollen grains. Third function of the tapetum is production of IAA, that is indole acetic acid. It is again an enzyme for early growth of the pollen grains or microspores. Next use of the tapetum is ovisch granules to provide the sporopollenin. Sporopollenin is a chemical which is provided by the tapetum as ovisch granules. Ovisch granules are present in the tapetum layer. They will produce a chemical sporopollenin. This sporopollenin chemical is required to harden the exine. Exine is the outer covering of the pollen grain. So sporopollenin provides strength to the external layer of the pollen grain. Fifth use of the tapetum is it provides proteins which help in compatibility and incompatibility reaction when the pollen grain falls over the stigma of a flower. Now we'll discuss about microsporogenesis, that is formation of microspores from microspore mother cells is called microsporogenesis. Inner to the tapetum layer, there is mass of sporogenous tissue consists of cells called microspore mother cells, which are diploid in their genetic makeup. They get round off, undergo meiosis. The sporogenous cells or microspore mother cells, which are present in the microsporangium of the anther, they start round up and undergo meiosis to form 4 haploid microspores or pollen grains. Now, how this process occurs, we can look at this PPT. A microsporogenesis, it's the pollen mother cell or microsporocyte. We can call it as microspore mother site or microspore mother cell or pollen mother cell. So it is the first cell that is diploid in nature. Now, meiosis is going to take place. 2 cells are formed in the first meiosis. The second meiosis from 2 to 4. There are microspore mother cells gets divided into 4 microspores. These 4 microspores, it is called microspore tetrad also. And in different plants, there are different types of pollen grains, and main it's exine. Exine means its outer covering. Outer covering is the special for each plant. It is the specific feature of each pollen grain, and to identify the plant of which this pollen grain belongs. The pollen grain, we also call it as microspore. Each mature pollen grain has 2-layered wall called sporoderm. If we discuss the structure of a pollen grain, it consists of 2 walls. Outer, as we have already discussed, outer is exine and inner wall is called intine. The exine collectively, in exine plus intine, collectively the wall is called sporoderm. Sporoderm consists of 2 parts, outer exine and inner intine. Exine's culturing is specific for each type of pollen grain. जो exine का structure है, exine की shape है, that is different for different plants. It is specific for each type of pollen grain. तो pollen grain को देख के आप पहचान सकते हो कि ये किस plant का pollen grain है. It is the exine sculpturing. Exine की structure कैसी है? Then exine is thin over some parts. If we closely look at the structure of the pollen grain, the exine is very thin at some parts over the pollen grain. These parts are called germ pores. Germ pores. Pollen grains having 1 germ pore is called monocolpate. If it has 2 germ pores, then pollen grain is called bicolpate. And if it has 3, then it is called multicolpate pollen grain. Inside the pollen grain, the protoplasm divides mitotically. एक pollen grain की बात कर रहे हैं हम. Inside the pollen grain, the protoplasm divides mitotically into 2 cells. Larger one is called the tube cell and or vegetative cell. Tube cell को हम vegetative cell भी बोलते हैं. And the smaller one is called generative cell. Pollen grain जो produce हुआ है, the protoplast, its protoplast will divide into 2 cells in unequal division. The larger cell is called tube cell or vegetative cell, and the smaller one is called generative cell. So this is the 2-celled stage. In 40% of the plants, the generative cell divides into 2 male gametes. पहले 2 सेल थे pollen grain के अंदर, एक vegetative cell और दूसरा generative cell. तो 60% जो plants हैं उनके अंदर 2-celled stage पे ही pollen grain release हो जाता है, anther से बाहर निकल जाता है. In 40% plant, the generative cell again divides into 2 and produce. These 2 are called male gametes. In 40% plant, the generative cell divides into 2 the two male gametes before shedding, pollen grain shed at 3-cell stage. So in 40% plants, the pollen grains are shed at this 3-cell stage. What are the 3 cells? One is tube cell or vegetative cell, and the two male gametes. Now, look at this diagram of the pollen grain or microspore. It has sporoderm. Sporoderm has two parts, outer exine and inner intine. Exine is made up of sporopollenin, the chemical material which make the pollen grains to bear unfavorable environmental conditions. Germ pores are present. In this pollen grain, there are 3 germ pores are present. So it is called tricolpate pollen grain. Inside the pollen grain, there is cytoplasm and nucleus. The 2 cells present in the pollen grain are tube cell or vegetative cell, the larger one, and the smaller one is generative cell. Now, what happens when this pollen grain fall on the stigma of flower? Then pollen pistil interactions occurs, and the pollen grain, if this chemical dialogue between the stigma and the pollen grain finalized, it is successful, that is, it is compatible, then the pollen tube will start growing inside the stigma and it will goes into the style. Now, what is male gametophyte? Male gametophyte is a structure which is produced inside the pollen grain. It consists of a pollen tube. This pollen tube contains 2 male gametes and a tube nucleus. So this is called male gametophyte. It is produced inside the pollen grain. Now come to the development of female gametophyte. As I have discussed earlier, where is the site of female gamete production? It is the ovule, which are present in the ovary. We will discuss it later, but first we will discuss about the different types of ovules. There are about 6 types of ovules. First, which we are looking at the PPT, it is orthotropous ovule. The different parts of ovule, micropyle, that is the mouth, you can say the mouth of the ovule, and its basal part is called chalaza. It's also called chalaza and the stalk of the ovule, जिसके ऊपर ovule खड़ा होता है, the stalk of the ovule, it is called funicle. In the base there are funicle and chalaza. At the top mouth part, it is called micropyle, and there are various layers of the ovule. Skin of the ovule, it is various layers. These are called integuments. So what is present inside the ovule? Ovules are present in the ovary. This we know. Ovules are present inside the ovary. And what is present inside the ovule? There is embryo sac and nucellus. Nucellus is the main body of the ovule, and inside the nucellus there is formed the embryo sac. And what is this embryo sac? This is also called female gametophyte. Now, in the first type of ovule, it is called orthotropous, which is very straight. The mouth is on the upper side. This is called orthotropous ovule. In the next picture of the structure of ovule, the second type is hemitropous. Hemi means first, ये बिल्कुल ऊपर था इसका mouth micropyle. In the hemi means half. अब ये half bend हो गया. It is bent, half bent. This is hemitropous ovule. Parts इसके वही हैं जो हमने first में discuss किए हैं. So second type is hemitropous ovule. Third one is campylotropous ovule. It is bent. It is bent at this angle, And Campylotropous, what we are noticing in the Campylotropous ovule, the embryo sac comes near to the micropyle. The embryo sac is also come to the micropyle, and this is the main difference between the Campylotropous and this Hemitropous ovule. Hemitropous में जो embryo sac है, that is in the center, and in the next to Hemitropous there is Campylotropous. Is more bent than the Hemitropous, and the embryo sac comes near to the micropyle. Next one is Amphitropous ovule. Amphi word आपको पता होगा, एम्फी का मतलब होता है दोनों, तो इसमें दोनों ही बैंड है, ओव्यूल भी बैंड है और एम्ब्रो सैक भी पूरी तरह से बैंड है। एम्फीट्रोपस ओव्यूल, लोकेशन इसकी वही है, पहले था ऑर्थोट्रोपस, फिर हेमीट्रोपस, देन कंपाइलोट्रोपस और ये एम्फीट्रोपस। फोर्थ वन इज एम्फीट्रोपस। पहले कौन से आपने डिस्कस किए हैं? ऑर्थोट्रोपस ओव्यूल स्ट्रेट, देन हेमीट्रोपस ओव्यूल बेंड, कंपाइलोट्रोपस में क्या है? एम्ब्रो सैक comes near to the micropyle. Amphitropous, embryo sac also gets bent, and more bent, the bending angle gets reduced. In Amphitropous ovule, bending angle get reduced and embryo sac also get bent. Next to the Amphitropous, there is Anatropous. This is the typical ovule present in the flowering plants. It's the Anatropous. So bending is complete, and the micropylar end going on bending, and it comes close to the funicle. This we can call it as funicle. The stalk of the ovule, it comes close to the funicle in Anatropous ovule. So this is fifth type of ovule is Anatropous. Second diagram for this Anatropous ovule is this micropyle, and this funicle becomes close to each other. It is called Anatropous. And next, sixth type of ovule is Circinotropous ovule. Circinotropous, sixth type. The ovule gets again bent towards, again coming straight. First it was straight, then bending, and this is Anatropous. And Anatropous, again it is bending towards the upside. That is called Circinotropous ovule. So these are the six types of ovules in the flowering plants. Now we'll discuss how Megasporogenesis occur. Where Megasporogenesis occur? Inside the ovule. Now, inside the ovule there is nucellus. The main body of the ovule is called nucellus. Inside the nucellus, a hypodermal cell in the micropylar region of the ovule. Mouth की तरफ जिसको micropyle बोला था आपने. So towards the micropylar region of the ovule, the hypodermal cell of the nucellus differentiates into primary archisporial cell. कोई भी hypodermal cell जो है वो differentiate होता है into primary archisporial cell. The primary archisporial cell divide periclinally. Periclinally divide होगा cell है तो periclinal सर्कल में periclinally divide होगा primary archisporial cell into two cells. दो सेल बन जाएंगे प्राइमरी पहले hypodermal cell था, it gets differentiated into primary archisporial cell. The primary archisporial cell divides periclinally into two cells. The outer primary parietal cell, जो बाहर वाला सेल होगा उसको बोलेंगे प्राइमरी parietal cell, और जो अंदर वाला सेल है इनर इज प्राइमरी स्पोरोजिनस सेल. आउटर मींस आउटर वाला का क्या मतलब है? जिसका मुंह माइक्रोपाइल की तरफ होगा. The outer cell is called primary parietal cell, and the inner one is called primary sporogenous cell. This primary sporogenous cell functions directly as diploid megaspore mother cell. This is sporogenous cell. it will function directly as the sporogenous mother cell. It is diploid. The megaspore mother cell undergo meiosis and form 4 haploid megaspores arranged linearly in a tetrad. Now here, look at this, what we have discussed. Look at these diagrams, which is the megaspore mother cell. मेगास्पोर मदर सेल कैसे बना अभी डिस्कस किया आपके साथ. मेगास्पोर मदर सेल है, it will divide into 4 megaspores with the help of meiosis. ये फर्स्ट meiosis division, फर्स्ट meiotic division के बाद ये बना मेगास्पोर डाइड. देन सेकंड meiosis के बाद बन गए 4 मेगास्पोर बन गए, 4 haploid megaspores. This condition is called tetrad.